Welcome to the latest episode of First Word in Sport on Monday lunchtime. Chokers, James, bottlers, take your pick. The quadruple is up in smoke. The real question is how many trophies will Arteta get his hands on with these incredibly negative tactics? I mean, I joked about the unwatchables, but how can a team so highly regarded be such a terrible watch?
It's Arteta all over, isn't it? We talked about it till blue in the face. He's such a negative manager that these things will happen, and I just don't rate him as a manager. Wasn't surprised, really. Well, I wasn't because City haven't been playing well, but it's a final. If you think about it, hindsight's a great word to use, but the experience told, really, didn't it? And Pep Guardiola out tactically did Arteta in the first half and let their back four have the ball and gone and said, "Go on, break us down." And surprise, surprise, Arsenal can't break you down because we know that they can't break you down through open play. And yeah, Nico Riley took his 2 goals quite well. Obviously, big talking points about the goalkeeper situation at both clubs. With Kepa in goal for Arsenal and Trafford in goal for City. I'm sure we'll get onto that. But yeah, it was cheats Pospolo, don't they? They've still got 115 charges over the Man City Football Club at the moment, but
I think this is one of the problems which we've touched on before. Is the charges against City are so bad or so gross, for want of a better phrase, that I'm happy that if they win these trophies, because it means Arsenal don't win it, but it means I don't care what City do. If City can win all the trophies they want, everyone knows that they have bent the rules, to put mildly, and we'll see what comes of it. But I'm not giving them credit for being, some great team, and have
I think that's why.
played by the book.
Yeah, I think that's why most people wanted City to win yesterday because of that reason. There's always going to be an asterisk over Guardiola at City.
Yeah, honestly, I don't. As long as other teams don't win, I don't care what City win. I just feel they're completely irrelevant.
Agreed. It's just
So one thing you touched on there was a couple of interesting parts to this game. One part was tactically, because I'm not sure Arteta, he hasn't needed to be particularly flexible with his tactics, I don't think, in this season at Arsenal. And he certainly hasn't shown an ability to nail it, for want of a better phrase. There was a really interesting situation, particularly in that first half, where Arsenal were playing out from the back, and you had City had 4 players pressed up high, and it was just very strange because you rarely see a team defensively have 4 players effectively in a line, pressing high, and Arsenal couldn't play out from the back in the way that they normally could. In that respect, I think they missed Raya in terms of his kicking and his ability with his feet. But it also highlighted some of the problems you have a little bit in terms of Rice and even Zubimendi, in that I'm not quite sure they're as good on the ball as you might think. Declan Rice does a lot of great things, but taking the ball on the half turn, under pressure, isn't something I'd put him down as being brilliant at.
no, he isn't. He's a more of a box to box player that gets up and down, and he's very effective at it. Yeah, Zubimendi had a relatively poor game yesterday. Couldn't get on the ball. Wasn't allowed time and space to get on the ball and try and pass through those lines. I thought Saka is what Saka is these days. Just
A busted flush.
he's just not progressed. Those injuries caught up on him. I thought he was bang average yesterday, and I know bang on about it completely, whatever. But if that was Mo Salah yesterday, the knives would have been out. But it's just because it's Bukayo Saka and he plays for Arsenal. It's not. He was poor yesterday. But Arsenal don't. You watch Arsenal and you think about Arsenal when you see the team sheet and you go, who are you scared of there? The front three you're not scared of. Trossard and Gyökeres you're not scared of at all. Havertz had just come back. They missed Eze yesterday because he has been half useful in the last couple of weeks, playing in that 10 role.
Yeah, but hold on, right? You missed
And
Eze, that was a decision. I mean, look, Eze, yeah, look, Arteta made some big decisions. I'm not sure that he's got it quite right. just quickly on Trossard, for example, I've heard someone describe him as a great squad filler, a player who's brilliant to come in and play, 10, 12 games a season. But when you see him starting in this sort of lineup, they're not as deep as you might think.
Yeah, he's just a backup player. He's not a starter. They just don't scare you as a team. When you look through Man City, you look through Real Madrid, Barcelona, Bayern Munich, all these PSG, none of them would start for those teams, that kind of thing. So yeah, it's just how much will this affect Arsenal mentally more than anything. I know they're 9 points clear in the league, 6 if Man City beat Palace at home in their game that was postponed yesterday, and they've also got them at home at the Etihad, so it could be down to 3. Now the pressure will be on, but you still expect Arsenal to win the league. But if they play each other in the Cup or in the FA Cup, what will happen? You fancy Man City to beat them all day long, twice on a Sunday kind of thing. It wasn't a good look for Arteta yesterday, but we shouldn't be surprised about it because that's the way he is. It's just he is a negative manager and he's more concerned about not conceding than actually going out to try and win a game first, in my opinion. And who have they actually beaten this season? Again, they've beaten Bayern Munich at home in the Champions League. That's a good result, yeah, in a league game. Atletico Madrid at home. Atletico Madrid are terrible travellers. They're good at home. They're rubbish away from home. Yeah, they did, yeah. But Inter Milan, we know they didn't. They got thumped by Bodo Glimt. Liverpool even beat them away, so that's not a major. And last season, who did they beat? They beat Real Madrid home and away, fair enough. But they didn't beat anyone. They beat Man City, didn't they? 5-1 at home, I think. But they haven't beaten anyone, really. They have been very good this season about beating the dross. And that's what's won them the league at the moment. And that's what you have to do in the Premier League at the moment, beat the dross. You don't have to really beat anyone in the top 3 or 4. They haven't shown it yet, who they can beat. So when they come up against a top-class side, they're not that good, I don't think.
I do think they're difficult to beat, generally. But again, it comes back to how negative Arteta is. I think fair play to City, actually. I thought they played all right. They've been very hit and miss this season. And they picked quite an adventurous starting lineup, actually. We touched on it on Friday, what he would go with. And, turned out good. O'Reilly playing at left back was a bit of a surprise. Obviously, Diaz was missing at the back. Again, has had these little niggles all season. But I thought City played all right.
Yeah, hold my hands up. I didn't think they'd be able to cope with the Arsenal midfield, but Bernardo and Rodri showed all their experience yesterday, and there were 2 brilliant performances by those 2. So yeah, fair play. I'd be interested to see what Guardiola was speaking to Haaland on when they were collecting the trophy. It really was like those 2 were kind of out of the way. They weren't really celebrating with the rest of the team. Wonder what was being said between those 2.
Well, Pep seemed to be very emotional just generally. So it does make you wonder, because even with the likes of Ake, and it was a bit strange to see him quite so emotional. Can I just take special mention to, hats off to Cherky for, driving the Arsenal fans insane. A few keepy ups. Love to see it in professional football. I mean, obviously it's a bit of a no-no, but I mean, there's something vaguely amusing about it. He's a proper player.
Yeah, good performance by him. Yeah, I don't like that at all. Bit of showboating. Ben White did have a go at him, didn't he, and got booked for it. But if you're going to do that, go right through him. Don't just give him a little nudge. Just properly go through him. But anyway.
So, just touching on Ben White, I see he's been called up for England this morning. It seems a bit of a strange one, to be honest. Obviously, he fell out with Holland in terms of a couple of, it was quite a few years ago now, and said, he wasn't going to play for England. I don't really see the point of bringing him into a 35-man squad or whatever it is. He's not going to be in the final squad. It doesn't make huge amounts of sense to me, really. In the same way that Harvey Barnes being called up by England and denying him the chance of playing for Scotland. Harvey Barnes isn't playing for England anytime soon, and neither's Ben White. I don't know.
Harvey Barnes rejected the chance to play for Steve Clarke's Scotland, so he was his decision not to play for Scotland.
No,
Ben White, I mean, we can right through Trent Alexander-Arnold's career for England then, and as a listener said last week, it was a very good point about Steve McManaman, very good comparison, when he only had 30 England caps at his age, went to Real Madrid, had a highly successful career at Real Madrid. So yeah, maybe he's been told he's not going to be picked at all, so we shouldn't be surprised that Ben White's been called up ahead of Trent, which is a shame because...
We should be surprised, James, because it's an absolute footballing travesty.
Yeah. But there you go.
So, fair play to Man City, first trophy on the board of the season. Arsenal's quadruple hopes in the bin. I guess the real question is, they should win the league. Certainly puts a little bit of pressure on Arteta in terms of Champions League and FA Cup. It feels like from the position they've found themselves in that a league title, whilst it would still be a great achievement, it feels like they'd have underachieved a little bit this season if that's all they win.
Because of the situation they were in at the moment, come 4:29 yesterday afternoon, yeah. It's all about winning a title though, isn't it? So they'll say that. And he needs to stop talking about the Community Shield, by the way. And so did the club. And so did anyone else. Community Shield is not a major trophy, lads. It's not. Never will be. Never has been. It's a friendly that could have been. That was shared years ago. It's nonsense.
Embarrassing, James, is the word you're looking for. Embarrassing.
Small-time clubs talk about it, in my view.
So let's move on. Let's talk about Premier League football this week. I have to say, it's been a brilliant weekend of football. I've thoroughly enjoyed it. Not often I've been able to say that in recent weeks. So there was a delightful irony about the Manchester United game on Friday evening. We have seen tears and all sorts coming from the United fans. They obviously drew 2-2 with Bournemouth. Interesting game in that not much had written. It was a bit of a slow burner, should we say, before a bit of magic from Cunha got Fernandes the first penalty. And then there was the contentious situation with Diad.
Diardo.
I don't even know what I'm talking about now. My mind is completely gone. Obviously, Ahmad, that's the one I'm thinking of. Whether he was fouled or not, I think it probably should have been a penalty. But it's also a little bit soft because he's just... I don't know. I've seen plenty of those not get given this year. And it wasn't given. Bournemouth go up the other end. Christie scores. And obviously United are outraged. I don't know. I mean, what did you think? Do you think it was a penalty?
Yeah. I think it was a penalty. VAR again saying they're not enough to overturn the decision on the pitch. Just hate that law, really do, or that interpretation of law. I think it's a penalty. Seen them given all the time. There's the only reason I don't think he's given a penalty because I think they had a penalty 5 minutes earlier or 6 minutes earlier from Fernandes scoring. So the only reason I don't think he wanted to give 2 penalties in 5 minutes. I think the referee just lost it.
Speaking as a fan of a team who hasn't had a single penalty all year, right? We have had plenty of incidents, at least that and worse, not get given, right? So I'm not going to have too much sympathy for United fans when that doesn't get given. Now I know.
Oh, sure. It's just as a football fan, I just want the correct decision to be made.
Right. So one of the problems I have with United when you watch United at the moment is how much, when you see it, even like Cunha, right? Clearly it was a foul, but he has gone down. Like he's made such a meal of that penalty, and he did it against Palace. When you got Bruno in the team as well, and Burma will do it. They are all so theatrical in terms of how they go down. And I honestly think comes a time and a point where when every attacking player for United is doing it, and doing it a lot, then sometimes the referees are just going to go, no, you're exaggerating the contact all the time. And I think I've said to you before about Mo, that sometimes he won't get the penalties he deserves because I think people think he goes down too easily. And sometimes your reputation catches up with you. And I think it probably caught up with Man United in that situation.
Yeah, but as a football fan, I want the right decisions to be made. I think it was penalty. I don't think Lauren's covering himself in any glory. The Man United goalkeeper for the Christie pass into net. It was like a back pass, and he fell down in instalments. And then the own goal by James Hill, I believe it was.
So, I mean, this is the thing but this is the thing about United, right? Yeah. So, under Carrick, they've had so many good things happen to them, whether it be soft penalties, decisions, own goals. That own goal they got there was a huge amount of luck involved with it. And the timing of it was incredible for them as well, having just conceded to put them back in front. And, you know, it's almost like they feel entitled to have every decision, everything go their way. I mean, you get used to it after a while. But, you know, United had so many things go for them. And obviously, Maguire's been sent off. And I have no problem with that being a red card and a sending off, I have to say.
Neither do I, yeah.
I honestly think if they went back to VAR, so let's say that one hadn't been given on the pitch, I think if they went to VAR, they would probably still have given it.
Oh, I wouldn't know, actually. I just actually generally wouldn't know. I mean, it should do, but one VAR would, one VAR wouldn't. I wouldn't have no. So United, by the way, scored 18 set-piece goals this season. It's only 3 behind Arsenal.
Because I mean, it's crazy. I was having a conversation with a friend. I wonder a little bit if the amount of games that Man United are playing and how much time they have to work at the training ground is having a direct correlation to how good they've become on set pieces. So they have so much time to practice these set pieces. And I just wonder whether it's one of those things you don't really think about, you don't talk about. And obviously Arsenal were completely different. But this Manchester United team has seen a massive uptick in the quality of their set pieces, number of goals they score. Obviously it helps when you have quality set piece takers like Bruno. It helps when you have big players like Maguire in there. But it just feels like there's a bit more to it than simply, just become good at set pieces. I mean, they are so good at set pieces now.
The way the league's gone, hasn't it? So you've got to be good. So, yeah. But anyway, I just don't rate United, don't rate Carrick. He's totally underqualified for that role. There's no reason he should be given that role in the summer at all. He's not qualified for it. It's Manchester United, by the way. It's not a Mickey Mouse team, Stockport County or something like that. It's Manchester United, and he's got no qualifications for that role apart from being a former player, which is not a reason to be giving someone a job at that level.
So it ended up being, I don't think the result is the end of the world for United. I think how it sort of came about will feel a little bit like the end of the world. In terms of, with Liverpool and Chelsea both losing, obviously, it's not been a bad weekend for Manchester United in terms of those top 5 places.
Yeah, they shouldn't be complaining to the PGMOL about decisions when they've got so many this season and in recent years as well. So,
I mean, just in the last 3 or 4 weeks, you know, it's crazy that they would feel the need to complain about something that isn't, in my eyes, that shut and dry. It's I don't know. I guess it gives the fans something to complain about. Let's touch on Saturday's games. Brighton, Liverpool. Brighton ended up winning 2-1. Liverpool didn't turn up, did they? Slot's still got a job, James.
Groundhog Day. It's getting really boring, even thinking about it, let alone talking about it. At least it gives something to talk about, doesn't it? It's just predictable. I mean, rant one out the way. Said it on Friday. If you're playing a European game on a Friday night, you should not be playing the 12:30 game on a Saturday. Hardly expect Liverpool to reproduce the 120 Ks they run against Galatasaray on a Saturday away game at 12:30. Conceded 2 poor goals and didn't create anything. It's a good finish from Kirkers. They actually anticipated it really, really well. Good finish. Mistake by Dunk. But Liverpool didn't create anything. The one, slight again, you lose Ekitike for a dead leg because James Milner's going around kicking people and our lads are so soft that they won't do it back to him. But then you bring on Curtis Jones, a midfielder, and you play Wirtz as a 2 up front with Gakpo. He's an empty shirt anyway. What are you doing, Slot? Take a risk. He's a manager that's shown he's not good enough for this club at the moment, ever, since March last year. And just made it easy for Brighton. Brighton penned Liverpool in when they were 2-1 up as well. So Danny Welbeck scored. VAR again. That 5 centimetres tolerance level that Liverpool got lucky with Wirtz against Fulham away early in the season. So there's no complaints that side with that. Yeah, Liverpool just bad. And it's not surprising though, because Liverpool are a bad team. They're just badly coached. It's so easy to play against. They're soft. Brighton had James Milner and Pascal Gross playing centre midfield in a Premier League game in March 2026. And they outrun you, outfought you, outdid everything. It's embarrassing. And FSG have got a lot to answer for. But again, we see from the big UK media, mainstream media accounts, absolutely nothing about Slot's future. Nothing that he's under pressure or anything like this. And it's all because they're protecting their sources at the club. And Liverpool media at the club have complete autonomy on what those reporters like Paul Joyce write, James Pearce of The Athletic write. There's nothing in the media about it. There is online, on social media accounts, on big accounts with big followers, but FSG don't care. Richard Hughes is too busy finding out how many zeros he's getting on his pay packet from Saudis probably anyway, but yeah. Can you see Liverpool winning another Premier League game this season?
Yes, but I think the problem is exactly what we've touched on so many times across the last 4 or 5 months. And it comes down to attitude of the players. These games are very difficult to get up for. And this is one of the problems you have when you have European games in midweek. And at the top level, you're talking incredibly fine margins. And if you're not completely at it and completely switched on, then you'll go to a Brighton and you'll lose. And Brighton were good value for that win. Let's make no mistakes about it. They could easily have scored a 3rd or 4th in that game. And, you know, the worry, obviously Ekitike going off was a blow. But, I mean, one of the problems I have a little bit, James, is you touched on, you know, expecting the players to run as much as they did against Galatasaray, right? Liverpool have a big advantage over a lot of teams, or should have, okay? You've just come off spending 400, 500 million or whatever it is. I know I joke at times. And to be able to do that, you strip some of the depth you have from your squad, right? Your squad balance is very heavy in terms of towards your first team players. That's a game where if you have a properly built squad, you should be able to make changes. And actually, you have players who haven't been running, you know, X number of kilometres against Galatasaray. You have players who are that little bit fresher, and if you're actually using a decent sized squad in recent weeks, those players aren't quite as tired as they are. You know, he seems to roll out the same midfield, game in, game out, and shock horror. You know, the players just, one, attitude doesn't look great, but they also look tired. You know, that's on the squad being built poorly for me.
It's on Slot though. He only trusts 12 or 13 players, and the different, like Ryan Gravenberch's come in for no criticism at all recently. You know, he's good against Galatasaray, yes, but in the Premier League he ran less than 9Ks on Saturday. 9Ks. Alexis McAllister ran 11.1, 2Ks more. Liverpool have been outrun 27 out of the 31 games this season in the Premier League. Yeah, he doesn't trust any of his players, so he can't come out in the media and say, I don't have the squad, don't play my players for 180 minutes in international break, protect them. Well, you don't rotate at all, mate. And they've got a couple of injuries, but every team's got injuries. You can't use that excuse either. It was badly. They just replaced the 3 forwards, I talked about it, with 3 forwards. And he wanted a smaller squad. He wanted Bradley to be his right back. He's injury prone. So it's his own fault, Slot. And
What I find
yeah,
about it,
I could continue, but I'm not going to.
But it's not like you have such a debilitating list of injuries. Yes, I know Isak's out, right? And obviously you've had some issues at right back. But it's not like you've missed many midfielders, or it's not like Konate or Van Dijk have missed much time. You know, Alisson obviously has got injury concerns, you know, and you'd have to wonder about his future. But I don't know. I wouldn't say your injury injuries this year have been that bad. I mean, I thought it was quite, not amusing, but it made me chuckle a little bit seeing some of the commentary on social media when Ekitike went off saying, "Oh, not another injury," as if you've had a season where you've been beset by terrible injury luck. It was like, what?
Yeah, you have to deal with it. He just brought on Curtis Jones, who should have been starting anyway. But it's no, it's no reason why there's been noises about Jones wanting to leave, Alexis McAllister, or seeded rumours about Szoboszlai now. When I go on about it, last thing I have to talk about is Gravenberch and Gakpo got brand new contracts in the last 6 months. For what? But anyway, they're not going to sack him now. They would have the perfect opportunity to sack him now in a 2-week gap of international break. They won't. But would they sack him if they got thumped by Man City in the Cup and PSG? Probably not. But the players checked out, in my view, when they lost at home to PSV 4-1. Just think about that. And they lost to Nottingham Forest at home 3-0 under Sean Dyche in the space of 4 days. And they didn't sack him then. He should have been sacked then. He should have been sacked 3 or 4 times during the season. I can't see him being sacked. They're going to limp until the end of the season.
So just one thing quickly that I did see in that game, which I always find quite an interesting one, was Welbeck got booked when Szoboszlai smashed the ball at him from about 2 yards away. And I always find it quite an interesting one in that it's, Welbeck, he wasn't particularly trying to stop the free kick being taken. He was just pointing as to where the free kick should have been taken. Szoboszlai has just smashed the ball at him. There's no real intention of actually passing the ball, or anything. It wasn't a case of him trying to get play going quickly or anything like that. I saw something online earlier in the week, and it was probably maybe an under 14s, under 15 kids game, where there was a fullback taking a throw in from sort of the right back position, and he's ended up throwing the ball deliberately into the face of a young kid. Because the player hadn't retreated quickly enough. So he's obviously picked the ball up and then hurled it literally in the kid's face. And he ended up getting a red card for sort of violent conduct, as in he's intended to hurt the kid. And it's difficult to argue with it when you actually see it. But it does make me wonder in terms of when you look at like the Szoboszlai thing. He has no intention of actually playing the ball. He is just, obviously he's trying to get the player booked, or he's trying to hurt the player, right? So there's a level of intent there that Welbeck getting booked for that doesn't sit quite right, given that Szoboszlai is the aggressor.
And then Welbeck could have got a second booking, but he didn't, because I bet the referee didn't want to send him off for 2 pathetic yellow cards. But yeah.
I don't know,
see it all the time, don't we?
It's a weird one, but I don't think we need to touch on the Fulham game overly. Fulham weren't particularly impressive. I sat through a lot of that one. They weren't particularly good. A more interesting one was Everton 3, Chelsea 0. And Everton were really good value for it. I mean, I wasn't surprised that Chelsea had a bit of a letdown after midweek and European exertions. We've talked about Rosenior being out of his depth. We've talked about Sanchez not being good enough. I mean, it just feels like we're on repeat, doesn't it?
Groundhog Day. They haven't scored for 3 games, Chelsea, either. That's the worrying part. Yeah, Sanchez is bang average. So £25 million for him is just looking shocking piece of business. They'll be lucky to get £2.5 for him when they sell him at some point in the summer. Caicedo looks like he's on his last legs. The kind of thing, looks absolutely exhausted from carrying that midfield. Saw Lavia started, but yeah, they're just poor, Chelsea. And Everton were good value for their result, really good value. Couple of really good finishes. The first goal and the third goal, really good finishes. Jordan Pickford as well was good, stopping. I know he made that one save in the first half that everyone's having a wow about. But what's he doing flapping for the first place anyway, because he's not tall enough. But then he gets his feet in the right position, and it is a good save. But if he does his job properly to start with, he doesn't need to make that save. But anyway,
I thought that almost summed Pickford up. Just that, 10 seconds, flapping at the cross, terrible keeping, and then an amazing save shortly after. I mean, it's like just Pickford in a nutshell.
Yeah, he's what it is, isn't he? He's got supreme confidence in his own ability. He doesn't seem to be affected by the outside noise, and if he does make a mistake during a game or whenever it is, it doesn't affect him. So you've got to give him respect for that. That if he does make a mistake, we see goalkeepers when they make mistakes. Sanchez, classic example. What's he doing in the first half when he nearly scored?
He got so
and then,
lucky.
yeah, exactly. So, and Rosini, he's completely out of his depth. He just, again, it's like Michael Carrick. Should be nowhere near that team. He's just, as I said on Friday, he's a puppet for the owners at Chelsea. And if they want to be a serious club, they're going to have to get a serious manager. They can't appoint someone like Rosini, who's done nothing again to justify that job. Like, it's just, yeah.
But the thing about Rossini that's weird was it wasn't a case of just giving him the job to the end of the season or 18 months. What, did they give him a 6-year contract or something silly? I can't remember what it was. It was something like as if you're thinking he's going to be the solution for the next 5 or 6 years. And I don't see how he stays beyond the summer, and it'll go down as another horrendous appointment from Chelsea.
Got Strasbourg, probably. But yeah, it's a good result for Everton. They're up to 8. And they've got chances of getting in Europa League big time. And if they... I mean, Liverpool and Chelsea are downright poor. So they could easily finish in the top 5. Why wouldn't they look at it, them and Brentford?
Well, they're only 2 points behind Chelsea now. And Chelsea have got a really tough run in. Chelsea are going to struggle for that top 5.
So Liverpool. Both teams will.
One player I do want to highlight, because he is brilliant, is Ndie of Everton. I mean, I've talked about him before, but there's no way he can still be Everton up past the summer. You know, you have so many Premier League teams now who are willing to spend 60, 70 million pounds on players. I'd be shocked if someone doesn't take a chance on him.
Yeah, I get what you mean, but would he leave? He might do, yeah. But he is the big fish there at Everton. You wonder if he goes to another club. And I'm just thinking off the top of my head, where would he, in the Premier League, where is he going to go? I mean, Chelsea might be stupid to go on interesting on by him. Maybe there he goes and gets a 8-year contract at Chelsea. So, yeah. But no, I do like him. Great finish, by the way. Really good finish. No keeper in the world saving that.
I more than just the finishing, it's... His dribbling ability is just brilliant, and the way he can keep the ball. Actually, I saw times where I had to applaud his work ethic as well. So sometimes you find with these tricky, skillful wingers is that work ethic isn't brilliant, but he was certainly putting a hard yard in on Saturday. So a massive result for both teams, but it's pretty grim for Chelsea. Leeds, Brentford, 0-0. I think that's too much. We've talked about that game. I guess the only thing from Leeds' perspective is there does come at a time and a point where they do need to actually pick up the odd win. You know, I'm not sure just picking up 3 or 4 draws between now and the end of the season will be enough to not get them involved in a serious relegation battle. You know, this was the type of a game where if I'd managed to nick the winner, they'd be feeling a lot more comfortable.
Yeah, just 2 takeaways. Brentford coming for a draw there. I didn't like that really from Keith Andrews. And they've got to stop this goalkeeper going down nonsense, because Kelleher went down and clearly nothing wrong with him. And they've got to stop it in the summer. And whatever they do, whether they say take a player off for 5 minutes, you want the keeper to go down, you have to take a player off for 5 minutes. And you're in the bin for 5 minutes. And you're not allowed to come over and speak to the coaching staff at all, because, as Daniel Farker pointed out, it's like, he's not injured, he's just cheating. So get on with the game. Why is the game stopped for a goalkeeper to go down? Anyway, let's move on. It was 0-0. Boring game of football.
One thing I would say on that point is, what people don't realise is that stuff filters down to junior football, because I was talking to a coach of an under-18 team, and he was saying that all the teams do that exact thing. They will do that, and it's just a real shame that that type of nonsense is allowed to go sort of unpunished. Let's talk about Super Sunday. Newcastle 1, Sunderland 2. Robbie, obviously got the late winner. Newcastle looked exhausted, and it's not a huge surprise. They've had a ridiculously difficult schedule recently. I know you thought they might get a result here. You thought that actually this was a good fixture for them. I think it's difficult. I've seen these local derbies with Villa against teams like Birmingham where it just means so much more to Sunderland than it does Newcastle.
Newcastle really struggled in that midfield. They didn't have anyone at the base of their midfield who could control the game. Obviously, Tonali was out. Bruno Guimaraes is out. He's actually got mumps at the moment, he was saying on social media yesterday as well. So he should be back after the international break. But they didn't have anyone in that base of that midfield who could sit in front of the two. Botman, they dropped Maddox Saw, didn't they? Played Botman and Dan Burn. Didn't have any control. They got given a goal by Luton 9. Anthony Gordon took his goal really well, actually, to be fair to him. Yeah, they just didn't have any control. And then they didn't create anything because they had no control in midfield. And that's a lot of their play goes through those two players, Bruno and Tonali. And when you don't have both of them, as Villa found out, when you don't have two of your three midfielders, it's very hard to play any cohesive football because everything goes through them that way. And yeah, Joe Linton and Wattamada, it's just Wattamada's just looking one of the worst buys going, isn't he? So now a midfielder from a striker, which he actually, funny enough, did with Joe Linton as well. Bought him as a striker and moved him back into midfield back in the day. So yeah, great result for Sunderland. Stuck in it after giving Newcastle a goal. And
they were pretty good value for it. They created a lot.
Yeah.
They created a lot of good situations and chances.
Yeah, and Newcastle didn't. The young keeper and goal for Sunderland really didn't have that much to do all afternoon. So yeah, Newcastle, Eddie Howe's under pressure. You said he might stay in the job. I don't think he will because these Saudis who own them are very ambitious. We've seen that in other sports. They've come out and said we want to be a dominant force in English football by 2030. We know that's absolutely going to be rubbish, but I don't think he's perfect for Newcastle when they didn't have the owners that they've got now, where they can potentially, if they can circumnavigate the rules or they decide to bend the rules like other clubs. I think they want a big name manager, and it's been proven that his actual eye for a player has been terrible. Those comments yesterday after the game about transfers. Well, you spent £170 million on three players that haven't improved your first 11, and you can't do that at Newcastle at that level.
Okay, right. So I think one of the problems with this, and I actually have a little bit of sympathy for Howe, is you're asked to play. So obviously you've got Champions League football. I mean, we touched on it a few weeks ago about just how many games Newcastle have played. And, there must be well into 50 games or something. We're not far off 50 games this season. And one of the problems you have is one of these teams who are not one of the top six. And so I include Villa in this. And there's a lot of similarities between Villa and Newcastle. And where it's very difficult is your best players get picked off, right? So obviously they've lost Isak, okay? You end up having to do moves you wouldn't particularly want to do because of PSR restrictions. So there's no way they wanted to get rid of Anderson. There's no way they would have wanted to get rid of Minter, right? So you end up with a situation where your very best players get picked off anyway. Your talented youngsters you've had to sell for PSR. And what ends up happening a little bit is your transfers have to be almost perfect, or not far off perfect, but you have to have so many hits. And the reality is Newcastle are going through a stretch where they had a terrible transfer window, and it's likely to set them back for a while. But they don't have the headroom in terms of wages and transfer fees that the big boys do. Okay? So Manchester United can get away with having 3, 4, 5 years of absolutely terrible signings. Going to spend 200 million a summer, and it's like, who cares type of thing. The problem for teams like Villa, Newcastle is if they have one of those windows, it sets back the club so far. And honestly, my mind's changed a little bit on how as the season's actually gone on, because this fixture list that Newcastle have had in this last 2 or 3 months is one of the worst I can probably remember for any team. And they've obviously had a couple of injuries in there, and he's done, don't get me wrong, he's done some really stupid things in there as well, particularly involving the likes of Tonali and overplaying some of these players. But the amount of games that team have had to play has been ridiculous, and they've actually had some okay results at various times. The reality is they might end up the season out of Europe, obviously not winning any of the cups, and on the face of it, it looks like a really poor season. And you can understand. The problem is, who do you get in who's better than Howe? And would one of the other, where would Howe go? I think there'd be plenty of teams. Tottenham, for example, would snap their hands off for someone like a Howe. I just don't know how many great managers there are out there who would be able to do miles better. So they may be better at identifying players, but I think that's a pretty thankless task in these jobs where you have all these financial restrictions.
Yeah, it's a fair point. I just think these owners are I get the point. I think these owners are ruthless, so they want to be ruthless, and they might say, "Thank you very much, Eddie. We look at your things like that," but they might knee-jerk reaction as well, going, "Well, we're out of Champions League next year, we're out of Europe." We'll actually help them, as if you just kind of explain kind of thing, because they won't have all those games. They won't have to travel here, there, and everywhere, especially in that Conference League if they avoid going into that. So yeah. We'll see. I don't think he'll be there in the summer.
So one thing I would touch on, right? So you talk about their ambitious owners, right? They haven't done anything with the stadium yet. They've been there for years, right? The things that actually require them to stick their hands in the pockets. And so what I keep hearing about Saudi in terms of other sports like golf and just other enterprises within Saudi just generally is what they're amazing at doing is coming up with these big grand plans for things, pumping in a lot of money early doors to show intent and then not following it through. So I'm intrigued. If they were deadly serious, Newcastle would already have plans. They've talked about a shiny new stadium or improvements. That's the only way you can compete from the revenue perspective. It needs to be built. They need, dodgy sponsorships, to try and compete. They need to take advantage of those Saudi clubs. In terms of transfers. There's so many ways that they could be more ruthless than what they currently are. And I just wonder if with the restrictions are in place, is that they realise actually it's a bit harder than they thought in terms of being able to pump the money in that they thought.
Yep. They've done a deal anyway, but if they do get a new stadium, can we please put the fans where they have to be allowed in the Premier League by the side of a pitch or actual pitch level, not up in the gods? And Newcastle get away with it so often. Well, since I can remember, the away fans are so high up. I don't think that's actually allowed in the Premier League, but no one's going to stand up to Newcastle. It's a bugbear of mine going up there. You're miles away. Absolutely miles away.
Aston Villa 2, West Ham 0, James. Villa showed signs against Lille that things were coming back. It's no surprise with what's happened, I think, in terms of injuries. I've been on... Look, let me take a moment to talk about Villa fans. Those fans calling for Unai Emery's head, honestly, just go and watch another sport. You do not know what you're talking about. Yes, there will be mistakes here and there. Yes, there's been some disappointment along the way in recent weeks. But we see with Newcastle, we see it with other teams. At one point this season, Villa had the top 5 central midfielders out, right? And they've had 3 key ones out. What a shock when even one of them, John McGinn, returns. What happens? Oh, Villa start winning again. And not only winning, but actually playing well. They played really well against West Ham. If it wasn't for Mavropanos, Villa would have been 3 or 4-0 up at half time. They battered West Ham. Now, it might be a case of West Ham are just really poor, but you've got to remember, West Ham came into that game having just picked up points against City and all these other teams. Villa played really well yesterday, and it's been a little while since I could say that. But injuries matter, and honestly, back your manager. Unai Emery is the best or greatest manager Villa have had, certainly in my lifetime. And people have such short memories. It drives me crazy. I thought West Ham, it was interesting. Obviously, they lost Todibo in the warm-up yesterday, and Potts had to come in at centre-back. Obviously, it was a big loss. but they offered very little going forward. And shock horror, James, do you know who they missed?
Go on.
Somerville.
Oh, Somerville. Sorry, I forgot how you didn't play. Yeah. He played in that FA Cup final, didn't he?
Oh yeah, in the FA Cup final where they win a trophy for getting knocked out in the quarterfinals or something. Yeah. So honestly, I come back to it. It's the same with Forest. It's the same. All these teams down the bottom. Your priority is to stay in the Premier League. West Ham had an absolute shocker picking such a strong lineup against Brentford. I said at the time, and every game he misses, and when you actually see performances like that yesterday from West Ham, I was quite confident about West Ham's chances of staying up, but they were really poor yesterday. So, the enthusiasm's tempered a little bit. But they have some very winnable games coming up. They have Wolves at home. I think they have Leeds later in the year at home as well. So, you look at Tottenham's fixtures and there aren't that many winnable games there. So West Ham do have a couple of games in there that if they can get wins, it's a chance, make real inroads to staying up. But they'll have to play a lot better than yesterday. Just a massive weekend for Villa in terms of those top 5 places with Chelsea and Liverpool losing. And they needed it. It's been a poor few weeks. Let's touch on the Tottenham Forest game. James, where do we start? Tottenham 0, Nottingham Forest 3. It's tough not to, take some level of amusement from it. I've got a lot of friends with Tottenham fans, and it's tough when you're down there, but it's also quite amusing. The number of Tottenham fans who are giving Villa all sorts of abuse year in, year out, telling Villa fans know your place in the food chain, all this sort of nonsense when Gallagher signed in January. It comes back at you quickly in this game.
I'm surprised we're recording this and Tudor hasn't been sacked yet, to be honest with you, because he's just, again, way out of his depth. Formation he went back to it, didn't play 4-4-2 like he did at Anfield and like he did it in midweek. They actually played alright for the first 15-20 minutes. They're probably the better team. Obviously a couple of chances from corners. They hit the bar, didn't they? Richarlison had that header as well, back across the goal. If that went in, fine margins. Talked about it. The first goal in this game was absolutely massive. And he panicked at half-time. He absolutely panicked at half-time. He brought off Van der Ven and... who else did he bring off at half-time? I can't remember. He changed formation, brought a doggy on, and formation changed again. It's just like, it's hokey-cokey with Tudor. 1 minute is 4-4-2, then it's 3-5-2. Chaos. And then Forrest got confidence. Gibbs White, Vicario, I'm sorry, has to do a lot better with that as well. And then game over at 2-0. It really was game over, and they just waited to 90 minutes, scored the third. Matt Sells made a great save from Solanke at the end. And they took Richarlison off as well after 67 minutes. You got it's going to score you a goal. They took him off to bring Imrani on. I'm like, what are you doing, Tudor? The big problem with Tottenham have got is those players down the bottom have no idea how to get out of this. They've never been in it before, in a relegation battle. Yeah, they've got some players back fit as well, like Bergvall, I think, came on yesterday. But you talked about it.
He came on at half-time for Spence.
So they took Spence and Van der Ven and brought a doggy and Bergvall on. Anyway, but as you said a couple of weeks ago, these players are coming back from long-term injuries. They can't expect them to get up to speed straight away. It's just not possible. It's 4 to 6 weeks to get back up to speed. And they're talking about bringing Kudos back. Well, he's been out for so long, like 3 months or kind of thing. He's not going to be hit the ground running straight away. And he talked about Maddison coming back. Maddison, forget about it. He can't play until in the Championship next season, probably. So it is a massive result for Forest. It really is. And everyone was saying one day, they had a game away midweek. They made 9 changes. Their priority was Sunday afternoon, 2:15 in London. We needed to win that game. And they played well after. As I said, Tottenham played well for 20 minutes. And then once Forest got a foot in a hold in a game, I thought Gibbs White was very good. Best game I've seen him play for a while, actually. And yeah, great result for Forest. Really good result for Forest. But Tottenham, they were lucky that West Ham lost yesterday, because if West Ham somehow got a draw at Villa Park, then they were right in there. But yeah.
So I think one of the interesting things with the team selection yesterday was Simon's not playing, so he had arguably one of his best games for Spurs against Madrid, and suddenly he's on the bench again. And I don't know if this is just an attitude thing, whether it's a stylistic thing in terms of work rate that Tudor's renowned for. I don't know, but you didn't bring him on until 67th minute. You know, if you're going to make changes at half time, I know there are sort of tactical changes, but he looks out of his depth. I mean, I said on here that he should have gone 3 games ago. It would have given whoever came in just a little bit more of a chance to get their feet under the table. I mean, so I've always thought, you know, Tottenham would just about have enough to stay up, you know, but the problem you have is losing that game yesterday means suddenly there's quite a big gap between yourself and Forest. And, you know, I'm not saying it's a match bet between West Ham and Tottenham, but, you know, I saw some other sort of stats where I think it was since game 19 or something. You know, Forest are so far bottom out of any team in the league over quite a significant number of games, you know, in the last 3 months. Something radical has to change. And honestly, it ain't happening under Tudor. And what I would worry about as well, I know obviously you had the bereavement yesterday, but I would have thought that Tottenham would have a list of sort of decisions that they would make based on the outcome of yesterday. So if they'd won, great. If they had a draw but played well, you might go, okay, we'll keep going with it if they're a bit unlucky. If they had a draw, didn't play great, you might go, okay, we'll stick with him. You get walloped at home, and yes, they were unlucky in that first half. But there has to be contingencies in place there where you go, he's out of a job last night or this morning, and you're bringing in someone else. Because they're in a whole world of trouble.
But they have no experience off the pitch how to run a football club either, do they? So that's another big issue for them as a club. They've got no football experience. I mean, this was a complete left field appointment. I know there's a bit of rumours talking about it previously before he got the job, but yeah, they're a mess. And for Forest, I see Chris Wood was travelled down with the squad. He made his comeback in an under-21 game in the week as well. So he's got 3 weeks off now until the next game. So
and scored.
I know we talked about he's been out injured for a long time, but if he can give you 15, 20 minutes every game, you know, it's just a matter of result. Yeah, Tottenham are just really in.
I mean, we come back to injuries, and Tottenham have had more injuries than anyone. Okay,
yeah.
You look throughout the season. I do think it's underrated when people talk about performances and narratives around performances and everything as to how big an impact injuries have. If Chris Wood had been fit all season for Forest, whilst I think he was probably on the fortuitous side last year in terms of overperforming sort of XG and all that type of stuff, you know, his finishing was abnormally good. There's no way Forest would be in the position that they are now if they'd had Chris Wood all season. You know, it makes a real difference.
Yeah, and they kind of wasted a bit of money in the summer as well. It didn't buy that great, but yeah. And that new lad that they bought from Italy as well, he looked bang average in the week.
Luca.
So, yeah, he didn't look great at all against Midtjylland. Yeah, wouldn't want to buy him in the summer properly either.
So how it all shapes up is, so you've got West Ham on 29 points, Spurs 30 points, Forest 32, Leeds 33. West Ham are, when I last looked, were 2.38 on Betfair, Spurs 2.56, Forest 7.6, Leeds 8. I mean, Leeds aren't safe in this race yet. But it's increasingly looking like a race between West Ham and Spurs. And one of the problems for Spurs is that when they had that little cushion to teams above there were a couple of teams below them and they had a 3-point cushion and everyone thought, oh, they'll be fine because they had the goal difference in their favour as well. Now suddenly there's only one team beneath them. You know, all it takes is West Ham to go and pick up a couple of wins from somewhere. And Tottenham are in a whole world of trouble.
So I'm just looking through the Tottenham fixtures to the rest of the season. So obviously you've got a 3-week break now. So the next game is Sunday the 12th, away at Sunderland. Then they're at home to Brighton. Then they're away at Wolves. Then they're away at Villa. They're at home to Leeds. They're away at Chelsea. And Chelsea and Tottenham don't like each other. And we know Chelsea could be fighting for top 5. And then the last game of the season at home to Everton. Now, we know Everton, we've talked about it, didn't we, briefly offline with a mate of ours who's an Everton fan, was saying to him, and he was saying Everton probably the last game of the season in recent years is probably played or 1-0 kind of thing. But anyway, and then you look on the other side, West Ham have got, obviously they've got Leeds in the cup in a couple of weeks. They're at home to Wolves. They're away at Palace. Home to Everton as well. They're away at Brentford. They've got the champions at home, Arsenal. Then they have to go to Newcastle, and the last game of the season at home to Leeds.
I definitely think West Ham have more winnable games in there. I think draws. This isn't going to be decided by a draw. I think one of those two teams is going to pick up maybe 2 wins or something like that. And the problem for Tottenham is, games when you look at the start of the season, like Sunderland away. I know Sunderland have lost, 3 recently at home. Sunderland will be bang up for that game. That is not going to be easy for Spurs.
And West Ham play Crystal Palace as well, which is a big advantage on that Monday night because Palace will be in Europe. So yeah, anyway.
Do us all a favour, put out your reserve team. But anyway, I mean, look, we are sort of joking about it. I think any time you see real jeopardy in the league, there's something amusing about it for everyone apart from the fans of those clubs. Fun and games, James. Fun and games. Let's talk other football then. We had actually a really big weekend in Scotland. So on Saturday, Hearts beat Dundee 1-0. Rangers beat Aberdeen 4-1. And we had Dundee United beating Celtic 2-0. Terrible result for Celtic. What it means is that you have Hearts on 66 points, you have Rangers 63 points, Celtic back on 61 points. I mean, that's just a terrible result for Celtic.
Yeah, so they're 5-point behind now, aren't they? And especially after they were playing Sunday compared to the other two, Hearts and Rangers played Saturday, that 5-point gap. And goal difference of +6 as well, Hearts have got and Rangers have got. So that's almost like another point as well. Rangers have got 8 goal difference, so that's a point essentially at this stage of the season. So yeah, and then what else you got in Serie A? You had Fiorentina drew 1-1 with Inter. So Inter have had 2 draws in a trot. Juve drew 1-1 with Sassuolo. Milan beat Torino 3-2 at home. Friday night you had Calgary lost at home to Napoli. Scott McTominay scored the winner there for Napoli. And Cesc Fabregas' Como beat Pisa 5-0. So it's looking Inter 69, Milan 63, Napoli 62, Como 57, Juve and Roma 54 apiece. And there's 8 games left in Serie A. Saying in it here, I saw that Ashley Cole won his first game in charge on Saturday for Cesena, I think it is. For Ashley Cole won his first game there. Into Spain, the big game last night was a Madrid derby, which Real came out on top 3-2, beat Atletico. Vinny Jr. scored twice. Valverde continued his scoring spree. Lookman scored and Molina scored a great goal for Atletico Madrid. But that red card for Valverde, mind-blowingly idiotic, stupid from the referee. How VAR hasn't even decided that's not a red card. Barely a yellow card, but ridiculous. They held on Real Madrid. They kind of needed to win that game because Barcelona beat Vallecano 1-0 early in the day from a Euro header from a corner. They won 1-0, so they are still 4 points clear, Barcelona, with 9 games left there. Germany, Munich, 4-0 against Union Berlin. Harry Kane's 31st league goal of the season. Elise and Gnabry scored.
Farmers League.
Dortmund, yeah, Farmers League. They're 9 points clear of Dortmund, who won 3-2, 7 games left there. In France, PSG won 4-0 at Nice. The young lad that they got from Barcelona, Duro, scored his first goal for PSG. News coming out of PSG is that Barcola's injured for 4 to 6 weeks with an ankle injury, so he'll potentially miss the Champions League quarter-final. Lens beat Angers 5-1 on Saturday, so PSG got 60 points, Lens 59, PSG have got game in hand. There's 7 games left there. The big news coming out of there this morning is that the game between PSG and Lens is due on Saturday the 11th in Lens, Saturday 11th of April, in between the quarterfinals for PSG against Liverpool. Lens has said, we are playing that game. We're not going to be bullied by PSG. We're not going to be bullied by the French league and saying you have to postpone it, because they've already had a game postponed anyway, so it would ruin the integrity. And the league have come out and said, well, we don't have to have permission from you, Lens. We'll do what we want to help PSG, basically. So I'd expect that game not to be played on the 11th of April, but Lens certainly aren't happy with that. And where else should we go up to? Oh, in the Championship. Fun and games in the Championship. Looks like Coventry are going to win that league. They had a very good win at Swansea. They were 3-0 up at half-time on Saturday evening, so they had a good win. They've got 80 points. They are 9 clear of Borough. Middlesbrough have got 71. And Ipswich and Millwall on 69. They drew at the weekend 1-1. Ipswich have got a game more to play. They've got 8 left, but 7 to play. And at the bottom, Blackburn, West Brom, they're on 43. Portsmouth 40. Leicester 39 and Oxford 39. So still all to play for at the bottom of that league and Championship.
I see Leicester missed a penalty in their game.
Shame.
What a killer that sort of thing is. I mean, I think there's some quite interesting games, because I think I'm right in saying Leicester have to play Portsmouth. It's at Portsmouth actually, and then Blackburn and Leicester also have to go to Blackburn on the last day of the season as well. So there's some quite interesting games down the bottom, which will probably decide the fate of those teams. Maybe I'm being harsh. It'd just be nice to see one of those big teams disappear out to League One. You know, it would feel like an anticlimax if it's Oxford and Portsmouth. Not to say Portsmouth aren't a big club, but they're not. You know, they're no West Brom or Leicester.
I think it's because you're a Villa fan, really, isn't it? But yeah.
Any other football from Europe or?
Yeah, a couple of things there that I'm just reading this morning that Rushden and Diamonds non-league have told 2 of their players they won't be picked again for the rest of the season after fighting on Saturday amongst themselves. They both got sent off. So Bruno Andrade and Tyler Winters have been told to find other clubs in the summer because they lost 3-0 at home on Saturday and they were both sent off. So they've been told to go and find new clubs. You won't be playing for us again this season. Well done, lads. And I see yesterday the law was brought in, first time used at tailgating. A individual has been charged trying to get into the Carabao Cup final yesterday. He's been charged with tailgating, and it also happened at the Spurs Forest game. Finally, the authorities are bringing in that law, where it's been brought in after the pretty disgraceful scenes in Euro 2020 final, which obviously 2021, but it was brought in there after, I think, roughly 10,000 fans without tickets got into the final against Italy, I believe. There's been a Netflix documentary about it. Lucky that nothing really happened, but that's a good thing to happen. It happens all the time. I've unfortunately had the mishap have happened to me before following Liverpool in Europe back in the day. Not a pleasant experience.
You didn't find it particularly amusing at the time, but I think others found it quite amusing that you'd travelled to Europe and some little scally had jumped ahead of you on your ticket and you were left standing outside the ground.
With a Dutch policeman having taken my passport and me shoved against the wall. Yeah, fun and games. And then meeting that individual and his family in the pub for the second half. Yeah, great. Lovely experience in Eindhoven.
It's a sort of thing you can only laugh when looking back on it, James.
Yeah, it was my second trip to Eindhoven that season as well. We got them in the group stages and we got them in the quarterfinals.
So obviously no Premier League football for a couple of weeks. So I think the 11th, April the 11th, is when it all sort of kicks back again. So we do have FA Cup football the weekend before that, the quarterfinals, and before that we have international football for the next couple of weeks. So I mean, let's just touch on England quickly, because England have got these friendlies against Uruguay on Friday and then Japan next Tuesday. Not that exciting, if I'm honest. It's one of these things. You just hope your team's players don't play. You don't. They need a break. They're absolutely knackered, and it just crazy. But anyway, so that's England. More importantly, on Thursday evening we have the semi-finals of the World Cup qualifying, which will be a little bit more interesting. So we've got a list here of the games. We've got Turkey, Romania, Czech Republic, Republic of Ireland, Denmark, North Macedonia, Italy, Northern Ireland, Poland, Albania, Slovakia, Kosovo, Ukraine, Sweden, and Wales against Bosnia-Herzegovina. So I mean, obviously things like Republic of Ireland away at Czech Republic, you've got Northern Ireland away at Italy, you've got Wales against Bosnia, and then obviously you've got Sweden. You've obviously got some pretty big named Premier League players away at Ukraine. I'm assuming that's not going to take place in Ukraine. I'm not sure. Haven't looked. But some pretty interesting games that actually matter.
Yeah, that'll be in Poland, I believe, Ukraine, Sweden. No Isak, he hasn't gone up to join Graham Potter's Sweden there. And then that's a one-off game, that is, with extra time and penalties. And the final games are for a spot in the World Cup this summer are Tuesday the 31st. So it could be Wales versus Italy or Northern Ireland. And for the Irish, if they beat Czech Republic, they will be home to Denmark or North Macedonia. So big chance for Wales and Republic of Ireland. Tough for Northern Ireland, obviously missing Conor Bradley. Mike O'Neill, how much has he been paying attention? Now he's joint job share with Blackburn as well. Wales with fancy their chances, actually, and obviously can Gattuso finally get Italy to a World Cup. If they don't qualify, this will be, I think it's a third tournament in a row that if Italy don't qualify for the Football World Cup, third in a row. Not just the odd, it's just remarkable what they do in European Championships, but it could be three times in a row.
They just win it.
So I mean, it's at least these international games, these friendlies, mean something. So the international friendlies, I mean, there's other couple of international friendlies if you want to. I mean, Brazil play France on Thursday night, Colombia, Croatia. You got Netherlands versus Norway and Switzerland, Germany. They're just boring games, but at least these European qualifiers for the World Cup actually mean something. So you've actually got a couple of good games to watch if you want to watch it, if you want your football fix.
I think the big thing to watch from this couple of week break is injuries. I know I've touched on it, harped on it non-stop, but if if one of these teams down the bottom picks up a couple of big injuries in this period, whilst teams like Tottenham will be looking the other way and thinking, we can get our injured players back. And other teams will be, like Newcastle will obviously get likes of Bruno back. Tonali should be fit. But if you pick up a couple of big injuries in that break, it can make a pretty massive difference to the outcome of, what happens down the bottom, certainly in the Premier League.
Yeah, it's just clubs will be praying, as you say, managers will be praying that their players don't get injured. Because if you get injured now, any muscle injury, that's season done essentially. It's so close to the end of the season. A hamstring or a groin or whatever like that, you're 4 to 6 weeks out and it's game over kind of thing. So, yeah, I mean, it's brutal. These players play. We ask them a lot as fans because these players, Rosina made a comment, didn't he? Fair comment that these players have been playing a lot of football, and we do ask them a lot.
Well, I mean, something we did touch on, James, was Chelsea obviously had that, the World Club Cup Championship or whatever you want to call it in the summer. It affected their pre-season, and their players haven't had much of a break, and whether it would catch up with them come the end of the season. And I guess we will see as things go forward. But if Chelsea don't get into the Champions League because they win the World, Club Championships, that'll be a trade-off they might look back on and regret a little bit at some point.
They might have needed the money, the 90 million quid they got for winning it, didn't they?
Yeah, but if they don't qualify for Champions League next
Yeah,
year,
it's huge, yeah.
that'll be comparable.
And keeping their top players, as I said last week, Fernandes, Caicedo, Palmer, et al.
But anyway, it's been a particularly enjoyable weekend of football. It's rare that so many things align, and hasn't been that much controversy, honestly, compared to some of the recent weeks that we've had. And time to have a little bit. I mean, I have to have a think. Maybe we'll do something a little bit different for Friday's podcast.
Yeah, I was thinking about it this morning, actually. I was thinking even just watching a past tournament, like a Euros or a World Cup or something like that, we'll have a think about it and we'll tweet it out or we'll put it on the socials and we'll just have a think about what to talk about for 20. Or if anyone's got any questions, please let us know. What you'd like us to discuss about, and we'll watch it, read about it, and see what we think about it.
Brilliant. Thank you as always, James.
Yeah, have a good week all. Cheers, bye-bye.